Grab your print or digital copy of Geaux Queen magazine today. Stay inspired by the incredible stories and features inside. Visit our website to grab your copy now. So I was thinking about just life and death because, as you know, like there's been a lot of deaths that's been happening recently, and there was while all these deaths were taking place, someone in my family had passed away as well. And this video might be kind of lengthy. So my aunt had passed away. My aunt was my mom's best friend, and it was her younger sister. So I always analyze death when a lot of people are passing away. And as we know, people do die every day. But we know when you're seeing people in media passing every single day, and then someone in your bloodline passes away too, you start thinking about things. So it just went on my mind, and my mom was not taking it too well because this was her best friend. This was her younger sister. So her sister was 76 years old. And I was just thinking about that in perspective recently, and I'm like, because I have three siblings, but out of the three siblings, I have two sisters. And I currently don't have a relationship with either one of them. And I was thinking to myself, wow, I know my mom's grieving, but man, I'm just like, I'm practically envious of her because I'm like, she had 76 years with a good sister, a sister who she talked to on the phone every single day. 76 years of that type of love, and it really touched me, and I know, like I said, it's sad, but from my perspective, I'm looking at it from me not having a relationship with mine and her having someone that she loved that much and who loved her for 76 years, and it really struck me. And personal FYI, I'm getting a biopsy this upcoming Thursday. I've known for years, since my very first mammogram, that I had a mass on one of my breasts. So they've been observing this thing for several years, which I never understood why we observing this instead of getting rid of it, but that's neither here nor there. So my recent mammogram last week, I have a new doctor and all this good stuff. So long story short, they're like, oh, we want to do a biopsy. Okay, obviously when things like that happen, you start thinking about life and death. And in my mind, this morning, my mind was just really heavy and emotional because I'm like, I'm 47 years old, and I'm like, God did not owe me 47 years. I didn't do anything special for him to be obligated to give me 47 years. I didn't do anything special which made me deserve August the 5th. There's nothing I did special yesterday that made me worthy enough to even be granted the day that I have today. So it just made me think about a lot of things just with life and death, that we talk about gratitude sometimes, but you really truly have to be grateful for every single day that we have. We think that we're owed all this time, and we're not. We've done nothing special where we are owed time. Every single day is a blessing. Every single day is a blessing. Every day that you wake up in the morning, it is a blessing. It's a new chance. And it just, like I said, I could be going on the deep end, but I always think about when people pass away, I just think about time, and we're not owed anything. I just always just think about just life and death, and just how we handle death, how we question death sometimes, how we don't understand death, and how we process it and we think about our own mortality. But again, at the end of the day, we're not owed tomorrow, actually. And like they said, like people say, tomorrow is not promised, and it is not promised in the most literal sense. You don't know if you're going to be here tomorrow. And it really makes you think when you really think about that, and you see other people passing away, and it's just like, but God keeps giving me another day. Like I said, he didn't owe me these 47 years. I'm not special. I didn't do anything amazing that he said I'm going to give her these 47 years, as opposed to somebody that didn't get 47. They only got 25. Just start making you put things in perspective, that each and every one of us are here for a reason. And the time that we have while we're here, we have to work on ourselves. We have to do the work on how we can make the best of that time that we're here. So, all that to say is just to have gratitude because, like I said, every day that we're here is a true blessing, and tomorrow is truly not promised. Hey, Queen. Welcome to another episode of the Q Chat. Today, our guest is Miss Tamika D. Smith. Tamika is a survivor of medical gaslighting, and her powerful story has been shared on national platforms, including the Tamron Hall Show. Tamika has brought attention to the challenges and injustices faced by patients, particularly women of color, in the healthcare system. Today, Tamika dives deeper into her experiences and her mission to empower others through her journey.
She's a queen about a business, working hard on a mission, and her purpose driven, crown on, never tilted. Go Queen. Go Queen. Go Queen.
Thank you guys for joining another episode of the Q Chat. Today, my very special guest is Miss Tamika D. Smith. Tamika is an advocate for medical gaslighting, something that unfortunately a lot of us women of color have experienced. She's also an advocate for lupus and also endometriosis. We're going to have a conversation just about some of the things that some of us women have had to deal with our reproductive issues and just being heard at the doctor and how to be an advocate for your health. And also, we're going to talk about, of course, mental health and self love. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking.
I'm happy that you're able to join us. I wanted to start off with I know you said, just with everything that I've researched about you and just the conversations we have, I know you do have endometriosis. I have adenomyosis, so I know like the similarities, just the it's so many things to talk about with that topic alone. The heavy
Mhm.
periods, how it drains your iron, the pain of the cramps, so on and so forth. So I wanted to start off with just the experience you had first before we lead into everything else. Just your experience in having to deal with the endometriosis before we get to trying to seek help from the doctor.
My experience, let me start with my symptoms, okay? Because a lot of times we can present symptoms and not understand what the heck is really going on. That was the case for me. I was working out in the gym 5 to 7 days a week. I had a very healthy lifestyle. I managed my stressors. Engaged myself with a lot of self-care, and I just really took care of me. The first symptom that I started to notice that was not a symptom that I would have contributed to endometriosis was chronic fatigue. I would be so tired. I don't care how much greens I ate. I don't care how many times I worked out. I don't care how much sleep I got at night. I found myself in a place of feeling chronically fatigued. There have been moments that I would literally pull on the side of the road, like just leaving my home, maybe like 5 minutes from leaving my home, and I would have this overwhelming feeling of tiredness. And I'm like, what in the heck is that? So I would pull over and I would actually take a nap on the side of the road. And I really didn't pay no attention to it. I was like, well, maybe I'm just tired because I'm working and I'm working out. I really didn't pay any too much attention to that. I know at the time I was dealing with anemia, but again, when I was seeing my OB doctor and I was explaining to her, like, I'm just always so tired, there was no resolve except, oh, yeah, you're a little anemic, but it's not nothing to be worried about. You're still healthy. Fast forward, I would get these excruciating headaches to the point of not being able to lift my head off of the pillow. I was a single parent. I'm still a single parent, but at the time, my son was younger. So I would commute him back and forth to school. And I found myself in a place where I could not wake up because the headaches were so debilitating. They were so incapacitating. And I would be in these what they call flares for periods at a time. Like if the flare would come on, I would be in bed for maybe like a week. And another thing that I noticed was chronic constipation. chronic constipation. I would be prescribed Miralax, and that did not work. Metamucil, that did not work. It would actually make it worse for my body. It would make it more complicated for me to even pass the bowel. Then I would go and I would get x-rays. And as I would get these x-rays, I can see the bowel impaction. Like before the doctor even say, like, do you see all of this bowel? I'm like, what is that? Is that like my bowel? It'll be all clumped up. So I say all of these symptoms to say that sometimes we can easily not ignore them, but not make sense of them. And especially if you're being seen by a doctor and you're communicating these things, and your doctor that you trust is saying, because they have, the education and the knowledge. So you trust their instinct, you trust their judgment, you trust those panels that you take, those blood panels that you take, you trust the x-rays, you trust the vaginal examinations. You just trust these things because that's their specialty. Meanwhile, I was literally battling with endometriosis and deteriorating right before my own eyes.
I'm happy that you mentioned the symptoms because everything you said, been there, done that. I've had severe anemia since I was a child, to the point that I could never participate in anything that required standing up. I couldn't do it. I remember one time trying for the flag team, I passed out. I couldn't do simple things like grocery shopping because I would be completely sick. So I totally understand. Cooking was a troublesome thing for me because standing up in the kitchen, I would always be on the verge of passing out. I've passed out a lot prior to, having the thing solved. Also, like you mentioned, the constipation. Your bowels are literally locked up because for me, I had, with the adenomyosis, I also had an enlarged uterus, fibroids and cysts, and my uterus was retroverted. So it's like it was pressing down. So just something like you said, a person may think, oh, I'm just having issues with constipation, but it's not just one symptom. So it's not just the heavy period. It's not just the cramping. It's the fatigue. It's feeling tired. It's having the headaches. It's being nauseated. It's not being able to function and use the restroom. And I know with me, when my bowels would lock up, I would be in excruciating pain for days. Like it wasn't just a simple thing, and it's excruciating. And I'm happy that the key word that you said was debilitating. And it really is debilitating because it robs you of just doing simple everyday things that no one else would think twice about. Like, okay, driving, no one thinks like, hey, I'm too tired to drive. No one understands it. No one thinks, oh, when I go to the grocery store, if I try to go out, I better park as close as I can to the door because you burnt out just doing simple things. So I thank you for just breaking down the symptoms, because a lot of times we think that, I think sometimes if you have a lot of health issues, sometimes you're so accustomed to it, you're not sure, like, is this normal? Or, is this part of just something that should come with my cycle? Like, we shouldn't be in excruciating pain, for our monthly cycle. So I'm happy that you did break down that part. So I want to talk about, of course, medical gaslighting. And I know you mentioned too with the doctor, it is extremely hard sometimes to just explain to your doctor what's happening. I know one time my cyst ruptured on my ovary, but that morning it started off simply, I'm waking up for work, I couldn't use the restroom. So I'm like, okay, something's wrong. Go to the emergency room. I'm trying to explain to them, I'm like, I can't use the restroom. Like, I can't do 1 or 2. Like, my body has shut down. Wow. They totally ignored me until I finally got rolled to get an ultrasound. Next thing I know, somebody's pulling me up, calling a cold blue because I just like passed out again. So that's when they're like, okay, I guess they were laughing. Oh, yeah, I guess we got to admit you now. Yeah, I guess so. So that night, they're doing, they had me hooked up. They're like, oh, we'll see that, your ovary has ruptured, it's bleeding, but your surgery be the next day. So all that to say is, middle of the night, oh, we got to bring you up to OR now. You're bleeding out. Your pressure's dropping. So again, just to say, like, something as minor as using the restroom could just be just the catalyst to something huge. But just like I said, at the doctor, they brushed me off at first. They did, because they were like, we can't figure it out. What do you mean you can't go to the bathroom? I don't know how else I can explain it to you.
Right.
So I want you to just break down just what was your journey from dealing with these symptoms to finally getting a doctor. I know I saw your appearance on the Tamron Hall Show, and I'm happy that you were able to get that platform out there, which is huge. So I know you mentioned having a laparoscopic. I'm just like her. I know she can, but your laparoscopic were able to finally get you some answers. So tell us about that part.
So from 2015 to 2019, 2015 is when I said, okay, something is not right. And just to give a little insight on 2015, I was working, living my best life. And I felt left-sided weakness in my face. I felt the tingling. I felt that my arm was getting weak. I felt my leg was getting weak. And my grandmother actually had a stroke. So I knew some of the symptoms from her. So that's what prompted me to go to the emergency room, because it wasn't unlikely for me to experience these particular symptoms. But this time it was just a little bit different, because in my opinion, it was more alarming. I was at work and I'm trying to write and I'm trying to hold my laptop in the left hand, and I'm noticing that this laptop is literally about to fall on the floor. Okay. So I decided to go to the emergency room. And that's when I had my first hospital admission. My very first hospital admission. They wanted to monitor me. And the nurse practitioner who came into the room, she was a Black woman. And I was so happy to see her, because I was like, oh yes, it's like me and you, we here. You're going to finally get to the bottom of all these little weird somatic symptoms that I've been presenting all of these years. You're going to be the answer for me. And I was so disappointed when she was not the answer. I was so disappointed when she didn't have answers. I was so disappointed and hurt and humiliated when I read my medical records, the notes from the nurse practitioner, saying that I mimicked the test when she was doing the evaluation on my left side, just to kind of see how my correlation was. She wrote that actually in her notes. And prior to that, she stated to me, all of your labs look fine. All of your imaging looks fine. Are you seeing a psychiatrist? That was like, I was blown away, because I'm like, wait, I thought we were here. Now we didn't flip from the good bedside manner to you being attentive, to you listening, to you running all of these different panels. And because you didn't find anything, that's the first thing you can go to is, am I seeing a psychiatrist? As a woman, as a Black woman who's very educated, who have multiple degrees, I would know if I need to see a psychiatrist. And at that time, I was working in the capacity with several of my colleagues specializing in that particular area. So from 2015 to 2019, it was a lot of medical gaslighting. I have been gaslit from doctors of my same color. I have been gaslit from Caucasian women, Caucasian men, in regards to my feminine health. And most of the times I was told that I was too young. I'm dealing with psychosomatic issues. Then it just was like another doctor that I saw, just to fast forward just a tad bit, she stated to me, call me when you want a hysterectomy. Now, I felt like that was totally just disrespectful. It was just disrespectful, because you hadn't even done any tests, any imaging. You didn't have anything to go off of that conclusion, except for the symptoms that I stated to you: the heavy menstrual bleeding, the fatigue, the pelvic pain, the ovarian pain, things like that. But you didn't have anything to really go off of that. How do you know that I didn't probably down the line want to have more kids? Why are we just jumping directly to call me when you want to have a hysterectomy? She was supposed to be one of the top doctors. She came highly recommended. So I said, well, let me give her a try. That was my first visit. And that was the conclusion of our visit.
Wow.
So when it got to 2019, I was leaving out of the gym, excruciating abdominal pain to the point I could barely stand at this point. Now, it just came out of nowhere. I didn't know what was taking place. I was like, well, maybe I might have lifted too heavy. Maybe I've done something that I shouldn't have done. But it wasn't unusual, the type of workouts that I've done that particular day. I made it through one of the meetings that I had at work, and soon after I went to see my OB. Complete runaround, complete invalidation, the microaggressions, the invalidation, the dismissiveness, the poor bedside manner, downplaying my symptoms, blaming my symptoms on STDs and possible STDs, possible STIs, which I didn't have any of them. Let me be quite clear. Multiple pregnancy tests, telling her my history of my mother having endometriosis and all of the symptoms that she went through. And there's a high possibility that what I'm experiencing can be endometriosis. She laughed. She even told my mother, because I started taking my mother to these appointments. You know, you get to a point sometimes where you can be so strong, but then you get to a point when you're advocating for your health and you're already in incapacitating pain for months and you're not knowing what's going on with you. You don't even know if you're going to wake up to see the next day. Those are the type of moments that I've had. So when my mother would come with me to these appointments, she became my advocate. She became my voice. I started to lose my voice in the healthcare system. The feelings that I felt was unworthiness. I started to blame myself for my symptoms. Like, maybe it's because I had a child at 17. Maybe that's why I'm experiencing these symptoms. I just started blaming myself. And what's not understood is that as me being a single mother as well, and you being the sole provider of your household, the clinicians don't understand the effects, the mental effects that it can cause on an individual. And they tell you with these type of symptoms and diagnoses not to stress, but they actually add to the stress. If you don't have a mental health illness like anxiety, expect to develop that, because that's what happened to me. And I'm not saying that happens to everyone, but it's greater. It's a greater outcome when you are being gaslit. Mm-hmm. So finally, in 2019, the multiple doctor's appointments, the multiple ER visits, the multiple sedations of medications that was not being effective. I was just feeling like I was being drugged all the time, sleeping all the time, even more, losing time from work, taking vacation time and sick time just to make sense of all of this. It became exhausting to the point later on down the line, I lost my career of 7 years that I worked so hard for.
Mm-hmm. Everything you're saying, sadly for me, it's not shocking though. It's disgusting. It's definitely disgusting, the things that they said to you, but it just doesn't shock me only because I've been there, done that. And me personally, I am biased. I feel like Louisiana, number one, the health system is not great. Number two, as we know, women of color that walk into the doctor's office, they automatically, I feel, write you off as it is. So I know one time I wanted to physically put my hands on a hematologist once because, like I said, because of the terrible cycles I had, they were awful. And I'm like, okay, I can't function. I have terrible iron. My iron was extremely low. So they're like, okay, go see this hematologist, blah, blah, blah. So she automatically, same thing. She walks in the room. I'm thinking I'm about to start getting the iron infusions. I'm all excited and everything. I'm like, finally, I'm going to get some relief. Mm-hmm. She walks in. I never spoke to this lady or anything with this little chart. And she's like, now mind you, I never met her, but she looked at my records. Well, with these blood results, you need to have a hysterectomy. There's no point in you getting infusions. Now, and I'm like, are you serious? Like, I've been literally waiting for this appointment for several weeks. And then I'm like, if you just said that you're looking at my blood levels and they're extremely low, I said, oh, you think my doctor's gonna give me a hysterectomy this afternoon? Because I obviously need help now. So I can't just schedule a major surgery, you know. And she just was so mean and ugly. Like, I literally wanted to wring this woman's neck. Like, I literally had to control myself because I was infuriated and I just was so upset because I thought I was going to get the iron infusions and it was terrible. Like, I remember that day I left, and this was in Covington, if that tells you anything, because we already know they don't want to hear us. So when you go to the North Shore, it's even worse. They ain't like us. in the North Shore. So it's even worse when you go over there trying to get a doctor to help you. So I remember I'm driving home upset on the phone with the primary care physician that recommended her. I said, that's why statistically Black women die at the doctor. And I'm going off and blah, blah, blah. So they on the other end like, well, I don't know if that statistic is true. I'm like, you can Google and find that out. I'm like, why would you recommend her? I'm like, I need help now. So I was infuriated.
Yes.
So long story short, like I said, we could literally talk about this all day. So I had found out another hematologist and she was like, we're going to help you. I'm so sorry for that experience, blah, blah, blah. So I was getting the iron infusions because you're right. They're quick to suggest hysterectomies. Now for me, I was already pushing mid 40s. So it's not like I had a desire to have any other children. So that wasn't it. But from my standpoint, I was like, if my iron level is this low, if I can't stand up for 5 minutes,
wow,
how am I supposed to survive a major surgery? That was my argument with them. I wasn't necessarily like against the hysterectomy, but I was not getting any information because again, I'm like, I'm a single parent too, 3 kids. I'm like, I can't have y'all play games on me on the table. And I already had a cold blue called on me before. So I just feel like they weren't giving me any information to be confident enough to say, yeah, schedule that hysterectomy. Let's do it. I didn't have that confidence. So I was getting iron infusions for maybe 2 years or so. It still wasn't working. And finally, my gynecologist, he kept telling me, you need to get the hysterectomy. But again, I just wasn't getting information. So finally, it was like, okay, I guess I'll do it. I still wasn't comfortable. My hysterectomy was scheduled for January 2022. The week of, I called him. I was like, I can't do it. So I canceled it. Mid-year, I ended up getting COVID. So COVID, on top of me being on top of me having low iron, on top of me having these monstrous heavy cycles where I'm passing like saucer-sized blood clots, I'm like, I can't do it. Like I'll go through it. I'll do it. So by then, it took a while to get the surgery scheduled. So we're talking, I waited a whole year playing Russian roulette with my life, but it's not they were explaining anything. The only reason I went through that surgery in January 2023 is because a nurse, I wish I knew her name. I didn't know I was even gonna have a pre-op appointment. They never explained that. If you have an afraid patient, wouldn't you explain the full details leading up to the surgery? No, my doctor didn't do that. Like he did my hysterectomy, but I'm just saying him and his nurse didn't explain that part. So when I finally had the pre-op, this lady, by the grace of God, I'm explaining to her everything. Look, I'm nervous. I'm like, I had scheduled this last year. I canceled it. And she broke it down to me. She's like, we check everything. We're going to get an EKG. They're going to check everything. If that EKG is not right, they're not going to do the surgery. And so she just explained everything and put me at ease. But if had it not been that, I know I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you if I had not gotten it because I was in terrible condition. Even the Friday, my surgery was scheduled January the 3rd. That was like a Tuesday. That Friday, when my primary care physician saw my blood test results, she's calling me like, you need to go to the emergency now and get a blood transfusion. I was like, well, I'm gonna just hold out. I'm praying I'll make it till Tuesday because I'm like, I don't want to risk getting a transfusion. Let's have a bad reaction. They're not gonna do the surgery. So I was just like, because like I need this uterus gone because I'm like, I can't function. Literally, I cannot. I live in a 2-story townhouse. I couldn't walk up the steps because my uterus was. My doctor said my uterus was like literally pushed up in my stomach because I told him I can't breathe. He said I'm not surprised. I can barely reach your uterus trying to do this manual exam. He said it has to go like, but all of that to say, because I hate to ramble, is that the things you have to go through just to get a result. Who knows? I would have maybe had that hysterectomy years prior if someone had spoken to me kindly and explained, hey, this is a life or death situation. I didn't get that. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of us, women that look like me and you, who walk in those emergency rooms or walk in those doctor's offices that have legit problems that a skilled doctor should be able to diagnose. I just feel like they're not listening to the point where it's like, okay, well, this is something I can diagnose. A lot of women of color have fibroids, obviously. We have adenomyosis. We have endometriosis. These are not like these, mystery illnesses. It's just do your job and listen. And it's so frustrating. And that's why I get exactly where you're coming from. It does take a toll on you mentally because if you can't even function like everybody else, you can't do simple things,
Mm-mm.
it does weigh on you, and it adds to anxiety. It adds to depression, especially when, first of all, having low iron alone, you're
Yes.
already feeling down in the dumps. So
Mm-hmm.
it's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to get
Absolutely.
to, how are you able to just get past just building yourself up, I would say, with the gaslighting, because it, when it gaslights you, and that's in any situation where you're being gaslighted, it breaks you down. Like, it tears you
Mm-hmm.
apart as if you're not worthy, like you don't have a voice. So how are you able to build yourself up through that gaslighting, to still be able to get up in the morning and, take care of your son, and you know what I'm saying, and still live your life? How are you able to navigate just that feeling so that you knew they were wrong and you were valuable?
Healing is a process. And if I can be quite honest with you, I'm still healing. However, I choose not to sit in it. I choose to use my voice to be an advocate for others. And that's one thing that actually keeps me going when I get messages and comments from Black women, women in general, but mostly Black women, because we are often gaslit. It gives me that drive and that momentum to keep going, even on the days when I have flashbacks of things that has happened to me over the course of the years in the healthcare system. I do have a strong support system. That's very important for me. I have a relationship with God. I do a lot of praying, and just having to write down these positive affirmations, putting them on the window. Those things matter for me. It really gets me through those times when I'm having those flashbacks and those intrusive thoughts. Because now, if I have any type of feeling in my body that reminds me of the past, I panic.
Mm.
I panic, I withdraw, I shut down, I go through depression, I go through anxiety, I worry. So I feel like I'm just like everyone else, but I'm that person that choose to be vulnerable and share my story, because some people aren't, they aren't there yet. And also, what motivates me and keeps me going is for the Black women who have lost their lives prematurely. Jessica Padaway, cervical cancer, those things that could have been detected well on. Now she leaves behind these beautiful kids and her husband and the beautiful life that she had and all of the inspiration and motivation and things that she was doing. I'm sure she did not want to lose her life at such a young and blissful age. In time in her life.
Mm.
So I choose to, you know, I choose to I choose my battles. I choose my battles. And if I can say the outcome of everything that has happened to me terrible, I will have to say that the good outweighed the bad, because I'm here today.
Mm.
And
And
I
have,
can be the mom that, I need to be. My son is 21 years old now. So now I put myself in that mindset. Like, I can see him, dating and get to know women and asking me these questions from a mother's perspective. And that means everything to me. Motherhood, parenting means everything to me, because that's something that never ends.
hmm I'm happy you mentioned Jessica Petaway, because same thing, she was misdiagnosed. And by the time they said that she had cancer, it was too late, which is very sickening. And there's so many other Jessicas and Tamikas and Sharondas who just wasn't getting help. And it really, it's infuriating, actually, and you're right. It takes one person to speak up, and then it creates a movement. So I definitely
Mhm.
commend you for, just because I know it has to be hard to still talk about these things too. So I definitely commend you for putting that story out there, because women need to hear it, and hopefully
Yes.
doctors will tune in to these episodes and say, okay, maybe I can change on just my listening skills, number one, in my bedside manner, and really, quite frankly, give a damn to help somebody, because
Mhm.
these are life saving events, to treat endometriosis, to treat the severe blood loss that these us women go through once a month. It can take a life, literally. I mean, it could
Mhm.
lead to so many different things: heart attack, stroke. So, like I said, it's just very unfortunate, though, to know that the gaslighting is something that still takes place, unfortunately, and it's the brush off that is terrible. So
Yeah.
I definitely commend you so that you're still here, which is a blessing, and that you're able to use your voice because, like I said, it's terrible. But I want to also talk about your advocacy work.
Mhm.
What have been some of the highlights? Because, like I said, I commend you, and I know it has some. I would think have some ups and downs. Just experience being able to help people. But like you said, you're human, so you still have to deal with just the past, or just sometimes maybe having triggers with what you experienced. So, what have been some of the highs of the advocacy that you've done?
My small beginnings. My small beginnings, sharing my story, taking to social media, educating, inspiring, letting people know what endometriosis is, that it's not just a regular menstrual cycle. It is a whole body disease. It can affect every organ, every main organ in one's body. So my small beginnings for those women who would see my story, who would comment, who would encourage me, who would even try to find, give me resources at times, my small beginnings, because those people are the ones that helped me to reach to where I am today. And even being on the Tamron Hall Show was just, I'm still really processing that moment, because I'm like, wait, did this really happen? But I remember in 2022, I wrote it I wrote it down, saying that I wanted to be on the Tamron Hall Show to tell my story. And I didn't know that it would come in 2024. And the way that it came to me, it was just, it was timing. It was timely, because I don't think in 2022 I would have been able to communicate my story without being angry. I was very angry, and I had so much rage towards the healthcare system and many doctors, and I never want to come across, because there are some good doctors out there. There are some good nurses out there. There are some good healthcare providers out there. So I never want to come across giving the message that is everybody, is everyone, And so my small beginnings, which helped me to reach those high points of being on such a prominent daytime television show, that means everything to me. I'm very humbled. I'm very, grateful, and I'm looking forward to where I will go next.
Hmm. Like I said, I'm just happy that you're able to find a strength to share your story because it definitely serves a purpose for sure. So I know we did touch on mental health. What are some of the things? I know you mentioned, reading your Bible and you have the joy of motherhood and everything. Are there any other specific things that you've done to cater to your mental health to, just to make sure, you have that wellness and that you don't go back to anything, because it's natural to have triggers, obviously, especially when you have advocacy. So you have to discuss certain things a lot. So are there any particular practices that you do to keep yourself grounded mentally?
As a Christian woman, a lot of times we harp on reading our Bibles and having that relationship with God, and I do, and I love to talk about it, right? But I do feel like there are people for everything. There's people, professional people out there for everything. If you need to get your laundry maintained, there's the cleaners and things like that. If you need to get your clothes taken in because they're too big, there are seamstress. So for me, having a therapist, having a therapist that I can talk to once a week, just to kind of escape everything that's going on during the week or some weeks before, or whatever the case may be, where I have objectives and goals that I want to accomplish for myself. Another thing that I do for my self-care and just taking care of me is rest. I disconnect. I shut down. And one of the things my therapist asked me, he was like, wait, explain this shutting down to me. Explain this. I said, listen, I don't want to self-harm. I'm not thinking about self-harm. I'm not thinking about not communicating, period. But those moments of being quiet are so powerful for me. It allows me to be more in tune with myself and with my needs. And sometimes that's just solitude. I'm not going to stay in that moment, but guess what? I'm going to embrace that moment because I need that moment. And I'm not really into, how some women go shopping and you have to spend money. That's not really me. I'm more of a journal. I like to journal. I like to research. And I also read stories and articles of other women who's gone through things that I've gone through, because it inspires me, it motivates me, and it gives me that voice to want to speak even more. And in my free time too, I watch podcasts. I like to catch up on various podcast episodes and things like that. So yeah, that's what I do for my self-care.
And I'm happy you mentioned therapy. I always, preach therapy because it's such a freeing experience, and it really is necessary in order to be on a true road of healing. Because prior to therapy, you don't navigate things a particular way, and you can have God and still have therapy. So I'm very happy that you broke that down, because there's nothing wrong with going to therapy at all. So I want to ask you to self-love, as you know, because I forgot you watch my podcast too. So self-love, of course, is a big thing for Geaux Queen. Just self-love really is the fuel to just have that confidence to overcome things. And I always talk about, we can overcome anything, and I don't mean it in a light way. So I'm always trying to be careful when I say we can overcome everything, because that doesn't mean like, oh, you're just going to overcome something and just the next day you're just going to wake up, everything's fine, you're never going to think about it, it's not going to hurt. No, but overcoming means the fact that you're able to use your voice. Like you said, you didn't lay in the things that were hurting you, and the mental aspect of the things that hurt us, that you can overcome things and live and navigate and still be worthy and still be valuable and still realize that you deserve the best in life too. So I want to ask you, how do you define self-love, and what role has it played in your life?
The way that I define self-love is a connection between self, taking time for self, not comparing yourself to someone else. That's so important, because if you watch the journey of someone else and how they overcame being medically gaslit, for example, and you feel like you're not taking that course of direction, you can easily get in that mindset of, I'm not doing it the right way. I'm taking too long. This person healed in a month's time and I need to amp it up. It's being graceful with yourself, having grace with yourself, being patient with yourself, understanding who you are as a person, understanding not only your wants and your needs, but it's really your desires, the desires of one's heart. That is very important to me. And during my course of being chronically ill, I finally learned what self-care is all about. It's not just the physical things or the shopping sprees or the binging. It's really coming to terms with who you are and being in unison with that, and accepting who you are. And it doesn't matter what other people may say or think about you, or how you process things, or how you do a thing, or if you feel the need that shutting down and being silent is best for you. It doesn't matter what other people may say.
Right, definitely. And you're right. It just, self-love too, like you said, it really is about living for yourself, but not being selfish. And and I know it may sound weird, but you can live for yourself and not be selfish. It's just being more in tune with your needs. And when you're in tune with your needs and you have that healing, it means that it's not about other validation, outside validation, or just outside opinion, because you have to do what's right for yourself. So, just incorporating that to love yourself. So before we wrap everything, I want to ask you, do you have just any, I hate to say tips, but what are some ways that we can advocate for ourselves? Do you have like any advice on how we can advocate for ourselves when we have to go to the doctor? Let's say, because I'm sure somebody's going to tune in and they may be dealing with a heavy cycle that's really changing their lives, but not for the better. And they may have something that they've been dealing with that they are not sure how to speak to the doctor about. Or sometimes people are afraid, especially people of color, because of so many reasons. Sometimes we're afraid to go to the doctor. So do you have any advice on just how you can advocate for yourself in the doctor's office or in the emergency room, or just when you're speaking with a doctor in general or a nurse?
If you have a scheduled appointment, you're going to see the doctor, like this appointment is coming up, I would say to be prepared. have a list of your medications, have a list of your symptoms, have a list of your triggers, have your actual medical records, not just a discharge summary. In the medical records, you will find doctors' notes. Having those medical records are so crucial when it comes down to being an advocate for oneself. Speaking up, speaking up. There are times when a doctor feels like they know what's best for your body. Ask questions, be persistent. I don't care how much you feel like or they feel like you're nagging them, you're paying for it. It's getting paid for one way or the other. So ask questions, speak up, be bold, be confident. Apparel, wearing apparel that states something about being medically gaslit, or I have a chronic health illness, or I'm feeling depressed today, or I need you to listen to me today. That can even gravitate to that doctor's attention. Um, and also operations in the healthcare system, being familiar with those operations, as well as like the individuals who answer the telephone, the receptionists, the nurses, having the communication and rapport with them as well is extremely important, because sometimes they tell you information that you should not know, but you should know because your doctor may not tell you those things. So I think those just a few things that I've learned in the healthcare system that's been quite lucrative for me in navigation. And keeping a binder or a journal with your symptoms, even down to the foods that you eat or environmental factors that may be triggering your symptoms or your diagnoses or whatever the case may be.
And I would also add to that to not be afraid to change doctors if you have to. You know, like you said, you're paying for it. And if you're on Medicaid too, don't get it twisted. It's not free, it's getting paid for. So that doctor is receiving money regardless. So don't even, and I think sometimes people get afraid of that too. If they have Medicaid, like, oh, they're not listening to me. You can still get a good doctor with Medicaid. And if you have one that you're uncomfortable with, so that's another thing too. Like I know you mentioned being confident, have that confidence to say, hey, if this isn't working for me, maybe I do need to get another doctor. Because that's why a lot of us are here too, by the grace of God, and also because the right doctor. So don't be afraid as well, because some of these doctors don't have a bedside manner. Some of them don't listen. You're not stuck with that one. Don't feel that you have to let somebody play with you, play with your life. Get another doctor. Don't ever be afraid to get another doctor. So I would definitely add to that one as well. This has been a great conversation. I just appreciate your transparency. Before we end everything, tell everybody how they can find you, how they can reach out to you. And I know you have the t-shirts too. So tell everybody the products that you have, how they can purchase, where they can follow you on social media. So give everybody all your information.
So you can find my website at www.mones, healthyeats.com. I do have a small selection of medical gaslighting t-shirts. I also specialize in all natural sea moss gel as well. And I'm on Twitter, I'm on TikTok, I'm on Instagram, Tamika D _Smith, as well as YouTube. Awesome. And if you need to email me, it's contact tamikasmith@gmail.com.
And before I let you go, can you leave us with an affirmation for the audience?
No 2 days are the same. Give yourself grace. You are worthy.
Thank you so much. I love it. Thank you again, like I said, for just giving us your time. And I know that this is a good conversation. I know it's hard for some because there's so many women that are dealing with this. They're dealing with fibroids. They're dealing with these heavy cycles. And it really, those cycles, and they come back to back too. Mine would come like clockwork. Like I never could get a break every 4 weeks. It really can harm you. And it's a lot to deal with on a monthly basis. And it really does take over your life in a way that I think people don't realize. The average girl is getting their period between some of them getting before they get in double digit age. Yes. Imagine getting a cycle of, let's say, 9 years old. Some women are getting cycles up into their 60s, 70s, which I mean, I couldn't do it, but it's a lot. So I'm thankful thankful that, you know, we had this conversation, that you shared your story with us, you know, and I really appreciate it. And I wish you all the best with your advocacy. And I know what you're going to do is going to change lives. And my hope is that the doctors, more than anybody, see it too, so that they'll look at it and be like, okay, I'm going to think about this, you know, my patients. Also, the doctors that are of color, you know, 'cause like I said, I know how you said it's disappointing because we're expecting, like, okay, I know you'll get it more than anybody. And it does hurt more, whether people want to realize it or not. It hurts more when that doctor is like us and they're not getting it. So I just hope that, like I said, if anything, that doctors too gets it, because that would be a true blessing. So guys, please make sure that you follow Miss Tamika and make sure you purchase one of her shirts, and also look at her other products that she has with the CMOS and all those other things that can help us with our health, because good health is wealth. And again, I just hope that for the women that are tuning in, that we were able to make you guys feel comfortable and realize that you do have a voice, that you're not alone with the things that you're dealing with. I know that just having these monthly cycles alone, it robs you of so much. And I really, 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 my heart goes out to people who are dealing with things like endometriosis or adenomyosis or fibroids, the low iron, everything. Please take care of yourself. Do whatever you can to find the right doctor that can help treat what you're dealing with. You don't have to suffer every month. Find someone that you can talk to, talk about different alternatives that you can do to have a healthier life, so that these things once a month aren't robbing you like this. There's so many different things that you can do with the right doctor that can help you have a better quality of life. So please, like I said, just take in what we said, have that confidence, because you're worthy and you're valuable and you deserve to be here. So thank you guys for tuning in to the Key Chat. You can catch this episode and more www.geauxqueen.com. Make sure you be safe and go love yourself.
She's a queen about her business, working hard